She said the test was positive. For the first time in years, we smiled in total disbelief. Tears welled in my eyes, her hand clasped tightly in mine. I squeezed her fingers, a wave of pure joy washing over me. "We did it," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. She leaned her head on my shoulder, a soft sigh escaping her lips. It felt like a dream, a miracle we had been praying for so long. But as I looked at her, really looked, something felt off. There was a flicker in her eyes, a shadow that didn't match the radiant happiness I expected. It was a subtle thing, easily missed, but it pricked at my intuition. Was she truly as thrilled as I was, or was there something else? A secret held close, a fear I couldn't yet comprehend. I brushed the thought aside, chalking it up to overwhelming emotion. I held her closer, wanting to bottle this moment, this feeling of impending parenthood. We deserved this. We had waited so patiently. But that tiny, unsettling detail lingered, a seed of doubt I couldn't quite unplant. I didn't know then, as I held my wife in my arms, that I was embracing a profound deception. This moment, so beautiful and full of hope, was already tainted. The path ahead, I would soon discover, was far from the one we had imagined. Now, real quick before we move on, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell for more stories just like this. Now let's keep going. My friend Dave said it casually, leaning back against the bar, a half-empty pint in his hand. "That was some party, huh?" he chuckled, a glint in his eye. I froze, my own drink halfway to my lips. My pulse hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the sudden silence. "What party?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Dave's expression shifted, his smile faltering. He hesitated, his gaze dropping to his glass. "Oh," he started, then stopped, shaking his head. "I guess I shouldn't have said anything." My mind raced, a party at our house. And I wasn't invited. The thought was absurd, yet the more I turned it over, the more unsettling it became. Why would there be a party with no photos, no mention, no evidence whatsoever? It felt surreal. My own home, the place where we were supposed to be building our future, had apparently hosted an event I knew nothing about. A knot of unease tightened in my stomach. "Dave, what are you talking about?" I pressed, my voice a little firmer, though laced with a tremor of apprehension. He met my eyes briefly, a look of what seemed like regret passing across his face. "Just forget I said anything, man," he mumbled, picking up his beer. But the damage was done. The casual remark had ignited a spark of suspicion that was rapidly growing into a full-blown fire. Why the secrecy? Why wasn't I informed? The questions spun in my head, each one more disturbing than the last. Whatever happened that night, it was clearly something my wife didn't want me to know about. Later that week, a gnawing curiosity became unbearable. I remembered the security cameras we had installed for when we were away. I hadn't thought of them in months. Now, they seemed like my only hope for an answer. I logged into the system, my hands shaking slightly as I navigated to the night in question. The footage loaded, grainy and distorted in places, but clear enough. The timestamp blinked, 8:34 p.m. The first man entered, my breath caught in my throat. This was real. By 9:12 p.m., the video showed her on her knees in our bedroom. It was a scene I couldn't process, couldn't believe was happening in my own home. The men kept coming. By midnight, the count was staggering. 11 different men had come through our front door, their faces a blur of strangers. Each one used her without a word, their purpose clear and devastating. One man climaxed inside her. I watched, my stomach churning, as it leaked down her legs as she crawled to the next one. There was no emotion on her face, just a vacant stare. And the worst part, she occasionally smiled for all of it. A detached, almost robotic smile. One guy even laughed. Another, in a moment of sickening brutality, slapped her when she cried out softly. She bore it all, and then she welcomed the next one. The sheer volume of it, the callousness, the lack of any protest from her, was more than I could comprehend. It wasn't just infidelity, it was degradation. I felt a hollowness spread through me, a cold dread that settled deep into my bones. This wasn't a mistake, this was something else entirely. The woman I thought I knew, the woman I was about to have a child with, was a stranger. What was driving her? Why would she do this? The footage offered no explanation, only a stark, horrific reality that shattered everything I believed. She made pancakes on Sunday morning, the smell of them filling the kitchen, a stark contrast to the darkness that had consumed me. She hummed softly as she flipped them, her movements fluid and natural as if nothing had happened. She came over and kissed my neck, her lips warm against my skin. "We should start thinking about names," she murmured, her hand stroking my arm. My mind went blank. Names for our baby, the one conceived in this nightmare. "I like Elias," I managed to say, my voice raspy. It was a name I'd always considered, a solid, comforting sound. "Oh, I love that," she said, her eyes sparkling, for a fleeting moment looking genuinely happy. It was a cruel imitation of the woman I thought I knew. But all I could see was her on her stomach, hear the phantom sounds of her moaning my name while someone else utterly violated her body. It was a haunting replay, superimposed over the normalcy she was trying to create. Her casualness, her belief that we could just resume our lives, was suffocating. She never once mentioned the party, the men, the utter destruction of our intimacy. She talked about baby clothes, about the nursery colors, pretending that the foundation of our life was still solid. It was a charade, meticulously crafted to keep me in the dark. I forced myself to eat the pancakes, to answer her questions about names, to play my part in this elaborate lie. But inside, I was a wreck. The images from the camera were burned into my mind, impossible to shake. Her affection felt like ash on my tongue. Every touch, every word of endearment was a mockery. She was a master manipulator, weaving a tale of domestic bliss while hiding a truth so horrific it threatened to swallow me whole. I was cleaning out under the kitchen sink, looking for cleaning supplies, when my hand brushed against something unexpected. Tucked away behind a row of bleach bottles, almost entirely hidden from view, was a small, discreetly mailed package. Curiosity, a dangerous companion these days, got the better of me. I pulled it out. The envelope was thin and plain, no return address, just my wife's name. I opened it, my heart sinking with a premonition I couldn't explain. Inside, nestled amongst some paperwork, was a DNA test. A DNA test. Why? We were building a family. Why would she need a DNA test? And then I saw the date it was taken. 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago. That was before she'd even told me she was pregnant. Before the joy, before the tears, before the whispered "we did it." My blood ran cold. Who was she testing? And why did she need to know the results before sharing the pregnancy news with me? The implications were chilling, each one worse than the last. Was she questioning my paternity? Or more likely, was she testing the paternity of someone else? The casual way she'd announced the pregnancy, her almost too quick joy, suddenly seemed like an act. I carefully put the test back, my hands still trembling. The pieces were starting to form a terrifying picture. The party, the casual mention of names, the DNA test, it all pointed to a truth I was desperately trying to avoid. This was no longer just about betrayal. This was about a deliberate, calculated plan. And I was the fool, caught in the middle of it, believing the lies. The suspicion had become an obsession. I needed more. I needed to know why. I remembered she had a spare phone, an older model she kept for emergencies, tucked away in a drawer. An idea, desperate and reckless, began to form. Using a downloaded app, I managed to clone the contents of that old phone onto my laptop. It was a violation, I knew, but the need to understand was overwhelming. I scrolled through her messages, her apps, my breath catching with each new discovery. And then I found it. A group chat simply titled "Get Wifed Up, 12 Men." One chat, my stomach twisted. The messages were chilling. Videos, countless emojis, countdowns to specific dates. They were planning this meticulously in detail. It was a conspiracy, not a spontaneous event. There was even a poll. A poll about the most intimate moment. Who leaves it in? It asked. Her response burned into my mind. All of you, please give me my baby. All of them. She wanted all of them to contribute, to leave their mark, to make sure she carried a child that was a combination of a baker's dozen of men. The thought was repulsive. But why then had she told me it was a miracle? Why had she painted this picture of a longed-for pregnancy, of a miracle baby conceived in love and mutual desire? It was a lie layered upon a lie. I stared at the screen, numb. The casual joy she'd feigned, the pained longing for a child, it was all a performance. She hadn't been trying to conceive with me. She had been trying to conceive with them. I decided to check the home footage again, focusing on the morning after the party. I needed to reconcile the woman in those videos with the wife I thought I knew. The footage began to play, showing the quiet aftermath of the night before. And then I saw him. One man, he didn't leave. As the others had departed, vanishing into the night, this one remained. He was in the kitchen making breakfast. He tried on my clothes. My blood ran cold. He was moving around our house like he belonged there. He took selfies in my bathroom mirror, a smug, triumphant look on his face. Then, the worst of it. He walked into the living room where she was asleep on our couch, her body uncovered. He leaned down and kissed her forehead. She stirred, mumbling something I couldn't quite make out. She cuddled him, her head resting on his chest like they were a couple. He whispered something in her ear and she laughed. She even called him baby. This wasn't just a one-night stand. This was something deeper, something that transcended the chaotic encounters of the night before. This particular man seemed to hold a special place. The footage was a betrayal within a betrayal. It wasn't just that she had been with other men. It was that she had invited one of them to stay, to treat our home as his own, to share an intimacy that was supposed to be reserved for me. I felt a surge of anger, hot and sharp. Who was he? What right did he have to be here in my home with my wife? The questions festered, adding another layer to the agonizing puzzle. The workweek began, and I was dreading it. Every interaction felt laced with irony. Then, a notification popped up on her phone, a message from her boss. My heart leaped into my throat. Hope you're sore in the best way possible. I stared at the screen, uncomprehending for a second. Sore in the best way possible. What kind of message was that for a boss to send? It was far too familiar, far too intimate. Then I saw her reply, a picture. It was a selfie taken in our shower. Water droplets still clung to her skin. The caption below it read, "Still dripping. Thank you for unloading in me again." My stomach turned. Unloading in me again. The words were crude, vulgar, betraying a level of physical intimacy I couldn't even fathom sharing with my own wife, let alone with her boss. The implication was sickening. This wasn't just a professional relationship. This was something far more personal, far more illicit. Her boss was not just her employer, he was one of the men. The thought that he had been in our home, that he had been one of the nameless faces in that security footage, was repulsive, and that she had greeted him with such explicit gratitude, it made me feel physically ill. This one message, this single exchange, confirmed what I had suspected. The party was not a random event. It was a deliberate, shared experience, and her boss was a prominent participant. The sore in the best way possible was not a casual remark. It was a knowing, taunting comment about their shared transgression. And her response, the shower selfie, was a defiant flaunting of her devotion to him. The paranoia was eating me alive. I started scrutinizing every detail of our lives, searching for any hint of deception. I turned my attention to our Amazon order history, a seemingly innocuous digital trail that might hold hidden clues. I scrolled through months of purchases looking for anything out of the ordinary. Then I found it. Discrepancies. 5 test kits ordered over the past year. Each one was delivered the day after I had been away, traveling for work. 5 test kits. What possible reason could she have for ordering so many? And why only when I was gone? The implication was clear, and it sent a fresh wave of nausea through me. One order in particular stood out. It was delivered the day after her boss worked late at our house. The working late excuse, which had seemed innocuous at the time, now took on a sinister new meaning. She had been using my absence, my trust, to conduct these clandestine tests. Were they to confirm pregnancies from specific encounters? Or were they to ensure the paternity of the child she was now carrying, hedging her bets as it were? The casual pregnancy announcement, the fabricated joy, it all felt like a smokescreen. She was carefully managing her deception, ensuring that if things went wrong, she had multiple avenues to pursue. These weren't the actions of a loving wife trying to start a family. These were the actions of someone meticulously planning a complex, multifaceted deception, using me as a pawn in her game. The sheer premeditation of it all was staggering. I stumbled upon a dusty box labeled "Old School Stuff" in the back of the closet. It was filled with trinkets from our early days, things I assumed she would have long since discarded. Amongst the sentimental clutter, I found a fake journal. It was bound in faux leather, its pages filled with handwritten entries. At first, I assumed it was a diary of our shared dreams, our hopes for the future. But as I read, the unsettling truth began to emerge. These weren't our dreams. These were fantasies, elaborate scenarios involving children with wildly different features. She wrote about a family with R, a daughter with M's eyes. Names I didn't recognize. One entry described a child conceived during a clandestine meeting with a father who was a stranger. Another detailed a planned pregnancy with a specific man selected for his physical traits. Each page described different men, a different father for each imaginary future child. She wasn't fantasizing about our life together. She was cataloging potential fathers, creating hypothetical families with a rotating cast of partners. This journal was a blueprint for her deception, a secret wish list of genetic contributions. The journal was a graphic illustration of her true desires, her hidden agenda. She wasn't looking for a husband to raise a child with. She was looking for a sire, a provider of genetic material, and I was just a placeholder. The carefully constructed facade of our happy home life crumbled around me. This journal was the final piece of evidence, the undeniable proof of her ongoing infidelity and her calculated plan to use me to legitimize a child that was not mine. The weight of Dave's earlier cryptic comment finally crushed me. I confronted him again, the evidence from the security footage burning in my mind. This time, there was no escaping it. He sat across from me, his face pale, his usual bravado gone. "I didn't know she was married," he stammered, his voice barely audible. "She told me you guys were trying an open thing, that you were both exploring other connections." An open thing. The betrayal intensified, twisting in my gut. He thought this was consensual. He believed this was an arrangement we had agreed upon. He fumbled with his phone, his fingers trembling. "Look," he whispered, pushing the screen towards me. It was a photo. She was on his lap, beaming, carefree, and entirely uncovered. The timestamp at the bottom of the image read, "The same weekend I was at my father's funeral." The funeral. The one time I had been away, grieving the loss of my father, she had been with Dave. And not just with him, but openly, shamelessly, in a way that suggested a complete lack of respect for our history, for my grief. The casualness of it all was staggering. She had lied to Dave about our marriage, and she had lied to me about her fidelity, using my father's death as cover for her deceit. This wasn't just about sex. It was about a calculated manipulation of trust, a brazen exploitation of my vulnerabilities. Dave's confession, coupled with the photo, painted a damning picture of her character. He looked utterly wretched, realizing the depth of his unwitting involvement. I felt no sympathy for him, only a profound sense of disgust for her, for the way she had so easily woven this web of deceit, ensnaring everyone around her. I braced myself for my wife's mother's disapproval, her judgmental glare. I had told her about the pregnancy, about our joy, about starting our family. But when I found messages on her mom's phone, my shock transcended anger. It was a cold, clinical confirmation of a monstrous truth. "He still thinks it's his," my wife's mother had texted. "Don't worry, Mom, I'm keeping receipts in case he tries to leave. He'll never know how many." Receipts, she called them receipts. As if I were a transaction, a means to an end. And the how many, it echoed the group chat, the chilling tally of men. She knew. She had always known. Her mother's reply was even more chilling. "Men are wallets. Make sure he's locked in." This wasn't a mother offering support to a daughter. This was a master strategist, advising her accomplice on how to secure her prize. She was complicit, a silent partner in this elaborate scheme. The pregnancy had been a financial calculation for them, a way to secure my assets, my future, for their daughter and her illegitimate child. The emotional component, the love, the family we had envisioned, was a secondary consideration, if it existed at all. My vision swam. The joy she had feigned upon the positive test wasn't about a baby. It was about the successful execution of their plan. That flicker of unease I'd seen in her eyes on that first day wasn't doubt. It was the glint of a successful con artist. This went deeper than I ever imagined. My wife wasn't just betraying me. She was orchestrating a lifelong deception with the full backing and guidance of her own mother. My life was now a carefully constructed prison. The spreadsheet was a morbid testament to her transgressions. I meticulously compiled every piece of evidence, lining up the faces from the security footage, their names, their known locations, even available DNA traits from their social media profiles where possible. It was a cold, hard inventory of her infidelity. Then, I shifted my focus to the conception window. Based on her reported due date and the timing of the footage, I calculated the critical period when the baby must have been conceived. It was a grim task, cross-referencing timelines and possibilities. Any one of those men could be the father. The sheer anonymity of it all was sickening. These were strangers, men who had used my wife, my bed, my home with utter disregard. But as I pored over the data, one man began to emerge from the chaos. He was the one who hadn't left that night. He had stayed, made himself comfortable, acted as if he belonged. He was present in the footage for longer, his interactions with my wife more prolonged, more intimate. He was the one who kissed her forehead, who shared breakfast, who took pictures in my bathroom. He was the constant in the whirlwind of her infidelity. My gut instinct screamed that he was the one, not just physically present longer, but somehow, symbolically, the one who had conquered their shared transgression, the one she had chosen to share the morning after with. The paternity test. It was the only way to be sure, but even without the results, a terrible certainty was settling in. This man, this stranger who had spent the night and the morning in our home, was likely the biological father of the child she carried. The ultrasound appointment loomed, a tense, unavoidable hurdle. I held her hand as we sat in the sterile waiting room, the air thick with unspoken tension. She was all smiles, talking about nurseries and lullabies, but her eyes darted around nervously. When the technician called us in, my resolve hardened. I watched the screen, my gaze fixed on the flickering image of our unborn child. The technician was professional, efficient, her voice calm as she went through the measurements. Then she mentioned the due date. "It looks like your baby is due around 2 weeks earlier than we initially estimated," she stated matter-of-factly. My wife looked confused. "Earlier. But we calculated," she trailed off, a slight frown creasing her brow. She clearly hadn't anticipated this, but I wasn't confused. I was grimly vindicated 2 weeks earlier. It lined up perfectly with the night of the party captured on the security footage. Exactly, the night of the Duzen people. The timing of the pregnancy announcement, her feigned surprise, the discrepancy in the estimated conception date, it all clicked into place. This wasn't a miracle child conceived in love. It was the product of a deliberate, orchestrated event. She clearly hadn't realized the implications of the earlier due date. Or perhaps she had made a miscalculation in her own elaborate timeline. Either way, it was a crack in her carefully constructed narrative. I met her gaze, and for the first time I saw a flicker of fear in her eyes. She knew I knew. The ultrasound, meant to be a moment of shared joy, had become a public confirmation of her lies. A quiet victory for me, a terrifying revelation for her. The preparations for the baby shower were in full swing. She picked pastel colors, fussed over the decorations, and eagerly invited friends and family. Her eyes sparkled as she talked about the gift registry, creating a perfect picture of expectant bliss. She gushed about the upcoming gender reveal, a celebration designed to further solidify the illusion of our happy, traditional family. Her parents beamed, offering their congratulations and support, none of them aware of the calculated deception at play. Meanwhile, I was busy with my own preparations. Quietly, meticulously, I was printing out stills from the security footage. Each image was a stark reminder of the truth, a testament to her betrayal. I RSVP'd every single man from that list, every one of them. My gift would not be tied with a bow or wrapped in pretty paper. My gift to her, to them, would be truth, unvarnished, undeniable truth. I had no idea how they would react, how they would feel seeing her, seeing each other, knowing what had transpired. But I knew, with a chilling certainty, that this would be a revelation they could not escape. The careful facade she had built was about to be shattered. The fantasy she had woven was about to unravel, publicly and irrevocably. Her perfect baby shower would become the stage for my unveiling of her hidden life. She was planning a celebration of a lie, and I was about to crash the party with the truth. The thought brought a cold satisfaction, a sense of grim justice finally being served. She placed her hand on her belly, her eyes closed, a blissful smile gracing her lips. "I feel the baby kick," she whispered, her voice filled with wonder. I reached out and gently placed my hand over hers, feeling the faint flutter beneath. I didn't cry. I didn't flash a triumphant smile. I just stared, my gaze fixed on her belly, on the miracle that was growing inside, a product of deceit. My mind was a battlefield of conflicting emotions. Love for the child, hatred for the circumstances of its conception. That night, as we lay in bed, the silence between us thick with unspoken truths, she turned to me. "I love you," she whispered, her voice soft, almost pleading. I thought of her licking a stranger's fingers, of her smiling faces in the grainy footage, of the messages that confirmed her utter disdain for our vows. Her words felt hollow, a desperate attempt to reclaim something that had long since vanished. "I love you too," I replied, my voice carefully neutral. I was lying. The words felt like ash in my mouth. The love I had felt for her had been systematically eroded, replaced by a bitter calculus of betrayal and hurt. Her gaze searched mine, perhaps for a sign of forgiveness, of belief, but I gave her none. I couldn't. The damage was too deep, the wound too raw. I pulled away slightly, the warmth of her body now a source of discomfort. The intimacy we once shared had been irrevocably tainted, replaced by the phantom presence of those other men. I was lying in bed with a stranger who was carrying a child that was not mine. The day of the baby shower arrived, and the house was transformed. Relatives, friends, colleagues, they filled every room, their laughter and conversation creating a deceptive veneer of joyous celebration. Her parents circulated, beaming with feigned pride. I stood up, thanking everyone for coming, for sharing in our supposed happiness. My voice was steady, betraying none of the turmoil raging within me. I gestured towards the television mounted on the wall. "Before we begin the festivities," I announced, my voice cutting through the chatter, "I have a special presentation for everyone." I plugged in the USB drive and the room fell silent. The footage began to play. One man after another, their faces appearing on the screen, their encounters with my wife undeniable. Her moans, her gasps, filled the living room, each sound a fresh stab of agony. Her face, already pale, turned a ghastly white. Her mother gasped, a hand flying to her mouth. Some of the guests looked away, embarrassed and shocked, while others stared, transfixed by the unfolding horror. Then a voice from the back of the room, a man I recognized as one of the men from the footage, whispered, "That's me. Oh God." The dam had broken. The carefully constructed illusion had shattered into a million pieces. The air crackled with stunned silence, broken only by the sounds of my wife's choked sobs. This was not the celebration she had envisioned. This was my reckoning, and it was just beginning. She screamed, her voice raw with fury and panic. "You ruined everything, you monster. That video doesn't prove anything." Her words flailed, a desperate attempt to regain control of a situation that had spiraled violently out of her grasp. Her friend, the one who had offered her support, stepped forward, attempting to shield her. "He can't do this," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "It's cruel, invasive." But before she could finish, I produced my phone. I had anticipated this. I opened the messages. "Can't wait for Tuesday night," one read. "You free Friday? I've got a new technique I want to try. Let's schedule another one next week." The more the merrier. The messages were between her and this supposed friend, detailing planned encounters, not just with me, but with other men. The friend's face drained of color as she saw her own words displayed for all to see. "They had scheduled multiple nights," I stated, my voice cold. "She was planning this for months." I turned back to the friend. "You even filmed one of them yourself, didn't you?" The friend's denial was weak, her eyes darting away. The evidence was irrefutable. They were not just enablers, they were active participants, collaborators in her elaborate charade. The room was in chaos. Gasps, murmurs, and the undeniable realization dawning on the faces of her family and friends. The woman they thought they knew, the one who was carrying my child, was exposed for the calculating betrayer she was. Her lies had finally caught up with her. The paternity test had arrived earlier that day, a stark white envelope holding the definitive answer. I sat in the now silent, torn-apart party room, the echoes of screams and accusations still hanging in the air. The guests had dispersed, leaving a wreckage of shattered illusions and broken trust. With trembling hands, I opened the envelope. The results were not a surprise, but a confirmation. 0% probability I was the father. The words swam before my eyes, a final punctuation mark on the end of our marriage, on the end of my dreams. She saw the envelope in my hand, her sobbing subsiding into ragged breaths. She crawled towards me, her eyes wide with a desperate plea. "Please," she whispered, holding out her hands. "Please, no." I didn't scream, I didn't cry. There was only a profound, empty stillness within me. I simply handed her the envelope, the thin paper a symbol of everything that had been lost. She snatched it, her eyes scanning the damning words. Her face contorted in denial, then in a fresh wave of heartbroken sobs, but her tears held no power over me anymore. They were the tears of a performance, now exposed. I stood up, the broken pieces of my life scattered around me. I looked at her, a stranger huddled on the floor, and felt nothing but a vast, unfillable void. "I'm done," I said, my voice raspy but firm. I walked out, leaving her with the undeniable truth and the wreckage of her own making. She reached out for weeks. Texts, emails, voicemails, each one a desperate plea for reconciliation. She sent photos of the nursery, pristine and empty, filled with pastel-colored fantasies. She claimed the baby looked like me, a final, pathetic attempt at making me believe the lie. She begged me to come home, to forget everything, to restore the illusion of our shared future. But I had already blocked her number. I had already packed my things, the few that mattered, and left the state, seeking distance from the toxic debris of our life together. Starting over was a daunting prospect, a blank canvas stained with the indelible mark of her betrayal, but it was a necessary exodus. I couldn't be poisoned by her lies any longer. Yet, I still wake up sometimes. The silence of my new, solitary room is often broken by phantom sounds. The echo of her voice, moaning names that were not mine. The imagined laughter of strangers in my home. I wonder if she remembers any of theirs. If in the quiet moments, the faces from that horrifying night flicker in her mind. Or if she has managed to bury it all, to continue her performance with a new audience, a new victim. The thought is a cold comfort, a reminder that some wounds never fully heal. The betrayal runs deep, an ever-present undercurrent in my life. The dream of family, of love, of trust was replaced by a waking nightmare, a constant reminder of what I lost. Make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss a new story from us. We'll see you in the next one.